Ladies and gentlemen, we are weighing in. Grant Turner, Mark Ostrander, I'm David Mirikitani. We're made possible by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by our good friends at Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. It's normally an exciting week because we get to talk about what happened to CKLV, getting ready for what's coming up. But we want to take a minute to honor two people that we lost this week. The first one we're going to talk about is Mark Ryland. For you guys that don't know, he was a national champion at Iowa. We've all had different interactions with Mark, so we can give everybody a brief chance to talk about that. You told me you actually wrestled Mark, correct?
Yeah, I did. I wrestled him at the UNI Open when I was retired. Well, I wasn't retired, but I was coaching, and I still like to compete. Kind of like a tweet Grant sent out the other day about still being competitive. We all have that in us. So I got a chance to wrestle him. We talked after the match. Told me how much he hated wrestling Austranders. He had wrestled my little brother Mike in high school for 3 years in a row. And my brother Mike passed away, I think it was now 5 years ago. And Mark Ryland came out with something on the internet about how my brother helped him become a better wrestler. And it meant a lot to my family and to me personally. That's the kind of guy Mark Ryland was. He did a great job with the high school program in Iowa City. He was a big part of the freestyle and Greco programs in the state. And he's going to be missed. He was a great, great guy, great ambassador to the sport of wrestling. His dad was also a great ambassador. So he's going to be missed. And my prayers and thoughts are out to his family and all the people that loved him as much as we do here.
Yeah, for me, when I first started Border Brawl in 2015, I asked people who should I talk to in Iowa that had credibility and would push our matchups and help us. And Ryland was the guy. I had known him from recruiting and being at junior duels. That's where I saw him a lot, like with the USA Wrestling stuff. And Ryland's a real dry sense of humor kind of guy, but he's like, all right, Mirikitani, I'll help you. And then any numbers I needed, he got. He told those kids this will be a good event before he ever saw it. Helped us get like the Max Thompsons, the Jacob Holschlags, those kind of people in the world. And without those people, maybe this event doesn't happen. And all the money we've raised over the years, maybe none of it happens. So GT, I know you knew Ryland well. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, prayers and everything go out to the family and all of the wrestlers and countless people that his life has touched. Mark was the director of Iowa USA Wrestling the entire time that I was, coming up through the USA Wrestling ranks. And, of course, then coaching in the state and then recruiting some of his guys out of high school and then having personal relationships with him, just as a coach, athlete time period was really cool. And then also getting to work with him on the USA Wrestling Coaches Council. And then I think, the assistant or the executive vice president underneath Bruce Baumgartner with USA Wrestling, he's dedicated a ton of time to wrestling. So humongous or tremendous loss for the state, tremendous loss for the wrestling community, but outstanding man, just a pure mentor in that regard.
Well, Nelson Brands wrestled for him and put a message out. The iconic video of Mark is when he pinned Randleman in that neck whip and then points to the ref because it was like with 1 second left, like to make sure that he had the pin, and watching Gable go crazy. The first interview, maybe the second interview I did with Terry Brands, I asked Terry what it was like for Ryland to be his coach, his son's coach. And I don't want to ruin it. People should go back and watch. It's basically an honor. Terry's honoring Mark. Like, I don't need to be in there. Why would I need to be in there? Mark Ryland's his coach. So GT, we also lost JD Hawkins. I know you knew him. JD was the guy that I always saw. He always had that roller. He was always working on everybody, super high enthusiasm guy. And I know was very successful as an athlete as well.
Yeah. And JD was, a California legend. He worked with a ton of those guys with the St. John Bosco people, Titan Mercury. He was even competing all the way into the Veterans Worlds categories. This man lived, breathed wrestling all the way through, still was competing at a, national level or international level within the veterans or even the US Open as of, maybe even like 5-6 years ago. I know that he will be greatly missed by all of the California people that have been close to him over the years, and then also nationally and internationally. The guy just, every wrestling tournament, you see the same, 50 to 100 people. JD Hawkins was one of those guys. He just lived the lifestyle. So another big hit to the wrestling world this week.
Yeah, tremendous loss to our community. I think in wrestling, we don't say I love you a lot to each other. I grew up with a Japanese father, so we didn't say I love you a lot to each other. But I think what this reminds us is you should say that to each other. Life is precious. You know how I feel about you guys, how much I enjoy doing this and how much you guys have brought to my life. And I just think we need to do a better job, all of us, at talking to people like that. So there's no real easy segue to this. We're going to get into what's been going on with what happened in Cliff Keen and the rankings and everything else. So we're going to click over here and start. So we're going to kind of toggle back and forth between the rankings and the Cliff Keen brackets. If anybody from Flow is watching, if you guys would mind putting these brackets on track as well, that would be amazing. They're a lot easier to look at that way. So just putting it in the sug box. I know advertising dollars work a certain way, but if you guys wouldn't mind, that'd be awesome. So here are the results: Glory, Schroeder, Kaler, Medley, Lorenzo down the line. The two things that surprised me were, well, maybe three: Kaler beating Heinzelman, Medley wrestling Glory so close, and then Glory absolutely destroying Schroeder. So then when we go to the rankings, the other thing we look at is what were the upsets at this weight. Kaler, Heinzelman. Noah Certain had himself a match against Sam Latona, snaked him and pinned him. Teskey beat Latona also. Teskey also beat Certain in a match that was really competitive and got a pin late. And Medley had a good day, beat Joe Manchio as well. So Mark, the rankings, you go up here, Latona makes a pretty big drop. Certain picks up some speed. Heinzelman has now dropped out of the top 8. So, when you kind of look at this, what things come to mind here?
Well, I think Patrick Glory is really, really good. I think in the semis, this is his first time really competing since the freestyle circuit he'd been on for 2 years, trying to prepare for that, the U23s. I think he's very competitive at that weight. Obviously, Suriano is going to be in here very soon after starting the second semester. That's why Medley's down there a ways. I think he could have went up with his performance he had at the Cliff Keen, obviously. But Latona, I just think he's cutting too much weight, David. He's got all the talent in the world to be a top-notch 25-pounder. I think it's just really, really hard for him to get his weight down and keep it down. So besides that, everything else looked about what I thought it looked like.
Yeah, for sure. GT, I think something that you and me talked about off the air is the turnover at this weight, at how many guys are not, like how many guys in the top 8 have popped in and out already. Like Malik was in there, McKee was in there, Teskey was knocking on the door, Latona was in there. It seems like that, like once you drop below Taylor Lamont, it's just been kind of a revolving door. Do you see kind of who places 6, 7, 8 at nationals being who gets hot, or do you think somebody's going to kind of step up and cement themselves there?
No, I think this is the Wild West. I think it's just going to be a national tournament that some of these guys will just come through the woodwork. Sam Latona was the 2 seed at the national tournament last year. So the inclusion of, some of these newer guys to the weights, or having, Pat Glory back, taking up a spot. I think it's just going to be whoever's the hot hand towards the end of the season, rather than anybody solidifying themselves at 6, 7, 8. I think any of those guys can beat anybody on a given day. Just really depends on where they fall in the bracket.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that is going to have a tremendous impact on the team race with some of those guys, like a Heinzelman, whether he can get in, guys like that. All right, so we'll jump to 33. And I think this is the best way to look at it. Here we go. So kind of a weird bracket, not super deep. The biggest upset here is Ragusan beats Cannon and beat him pretty convincingly. But, you know, Hayden Drury, Devin Turner, Coder Hunt, who's right across the river here in Missouri, in Illinois. None of these guys were really even in the top 20. I mean, maybe Devin Turner was. And then if we go to the upsets at 33, Ragusan beats Cannon, Malik Hines loses, Schwartz drops a couple. Turner, like I said, was 20. Joe Greenwood is super up and down. So not a lot to talk about here. GT, what I would say to you is I'm a big Dylan Ragusan fan. You know, I've got a chance to watch him wrestle a lot. And we talked about last week, on paper, he was the worst guy in Michigan's lineup, and he goes and wins Cliff Keen. So there's rumors about Logan Massa coming back, Soriano's coming back to Michigan. Can Michigan, first of all, how impressed were you with Ragusan? And do you feel like Michigan can maybe make a run at those top two teams?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, once again, the way that national tournaments run is that, you know, you have a couple of those guys from either the Penn State or Iowa guys stumble that were maybe guaranteed points or get less points than what they were thinking of. And then those guys come out of the woodwork. Like all of a sudden, Soriano is pretty much a proven guy that can do pretty well at a national tournament.
Yeah.
And, you know, Ragusan is proving to be, you know, a problem at that weight class for a lot of people. But you still look at this weight, it's salty, man. So even if he is like in the 6-7 spot, and I don't remember where Cannon was at the end of the year last year.
He was in that 7th and 8th place match in nationals, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, right where he's at, but you know, is Ragusan going to be able to beat the likes of the top 4 or 5 guys? You know, maybe, I don't know, but you know, it does give Michigan some points at a weight class that they may not have had any at the beginning of the season. So,
and he bonuses a lot of guys, Mark, that he doesn't like. He bonuses the guy he's supposed to beat. So he's a guy that could take 7th, but score 10 points for you.
Yeah. I mean, he's actually really what Michigan needs if they want to make a run at the top, obviously, because they're going to have their horses. They're going to have Soriano. They're going to have Paris at heavyweight. So they got the bookends. They got the bookends right there that you can see both those guys being in the finals. I'm not sure any of their guys are favored to win the national title, which makes a big difference. But if you can put 3-4 guys in the final, David, that's a lot of points, as we know. Plus your other guys are fighting for All-American spots, and every one of their guys are going to be in the hunt to be fighting for an All-American spot. That's huge.
We looked at it last week. Their worst guy in the lineup besides Ragusan was round of 16. Ragusan's definitely elevated himself from a guy that was 1 and 2 last year at a weight where he was probably cutting too much. Yep. So jump to 41. I'm going to do a spoiler alert. I'm about to lose my freaking mind at 165, just so everybody knows. Like, if you guys like it when Ostrander blows a gasket, it's coming. I'm just telling you. So, all right. 141, Carlson 1, Alira's 2, Red 3, Matt 4 down the line. Alira's wrestled well against Red, and then Carlson pinned Alira's late in a really good match. Carlson looked really good. The upsets at 141, Carlson over Alira's. Cale Happel beating Alan Hart. Alan Hart's going in the wrong direction. Phileas is a minor upset over Willits. Matt was unranked and beat Phileas. And on down the line, nothing too crazy here. You know, and we spent a lot of time looking at the top 8 guys and what that means team-wise. So you get to 41, really not a lot changed. I still think Alira's is a really high ceiling. And I also think that Carlson has cemented himself in the picture. I'm going to make a prediction. I think Dom Demas is going to wrestle 49 this weekend in Bedlam. So I got a feeling they got to get him in the lineup. I know last summer he was complaining about making 41, and it doesn't really help OU, but it would bump some other guys up in the rankings. I'm still interested to see Real Woods in here. I don't think there's a ton of changes here, guys. Is there anything you guys want to talk about at 41 before we bump up to 49?
I think it's pretty cut and dry from what I'm seeing right now. Carlson is probably the big surprise to me how well he's wrestled so far this year. So
for sure. So let's talk about 49. 49. I think the thing that was shocking to me was how well Yanni Diakomahalis just controlled Sammy Sasso. After a close match with Ridge Lovett, Yaya and Sasso had a really close match. So the final places were Yanni, Sasso, Lovett, Yaya, Abbas, Mitch Moore, Legend Lamer, Michael Blockus. Probably one of the best weights, well, certainly one of the best weights at CKLV. Upsets Lovett over Abbas by 9-2, which is a big score. Bo Bartlett drops a match. Omania drops a match. Hagen drops a match. Omania drops another match. GT, you've seen Yanni wrestle a lot. Were you surprised with how easily he won that match?
I'm not necessarily surprised at how good Yanni is at this point. I mean, we all know that he's just a monster. And I think Sasso is, once again, it's early in the season. He probably hasn't, got full stride yet. But yes, I was, I didn't think that Sasso would necessarily give up that many points to Yanni, but Yanni keeps pressing the action. So super awesome finals.
Yanni also just rode the crap out of him, which, like, Mark, you mentioned Glory coming back from freestyle and maybe getting his sea legs together because he's a good folk style rider. Yanni looked like he'd been just doing extra riding on the side or something.
Well, I think if the fans want to watch a match, watch that semis match with Rich Lovett. That was a phenomenal match. Those two were going after each other. Wow, yeah. That was so much fun to watch. That was, to me, that may have been the best match at Cliff King tournament of any weight of, even though it was only in the semis, I think it was the best match wrestled.
The best match doesn't have to be in the finals. A lot of times the best matches at nationals are Friday night, not Saturday night, or even, Friday morning to get in the top six. Yaya gave Sasso a good go. He just can't get away from him. And so that's going to be a problem for him if he wants to ever win that match. He's going to probably have to get 2 takedowns. All right, we'll bump to 57 here at CKLV. Ryan Deacon looked like he's ready for all that smoke. And Quincy Monday looks like he's ready for everybody's smoke but Deacon. So he put it on Peyton Robb. Deacon, Monday, and then Peyton Robb defaulted out and Kendall Coleman defaulted out. That's why you see 2 6-placers there. Jacob Wright was 3rd. Will Lewan was 4th. I really think Robb and Kendall Coleman in a normal bracket probably would have placed 3rd and 4th. So the rankings will indicate they didn't drop that far. So we get down here. Quincy Monday has keeps moving up a little bit. He's ahead of O'Connor now. GT, you see a lot of high-level guys. You coach high-level guys. How impressed are you with Quincy Monday's, I won't even say open double, like his reshot technique and skill along with amazing athleticism?
I think he's starting to put a lot of things together. I think his timing and his, counter offense and even his offense from the open, you saw that against Caleb Young on display in Carver Hawkeye, just his athleticism and his ability to kind of, use his motion as a defense mechanism and then also to set up his offense. This weight is very intriguing to me. I think I think that there's a lot of people that can keep it really close with each other. And I feel like even David Carr is, bona fide #1 guy in the nation, but these guys, if they keep it close, that's just one takedown or a couple of bad calls away from getting beat.
Yeah, Mark, I agree. Mark, how do you see it?
Yeah, I see Deacon as being a real threat. He's been a threat before. I think that's somebody you do not want to wrestle. And I think we're also leaving out a guy at Minnesota, Brayton Lee. I think he's the real deal. I think he could be right up there when it comes to it because of his pace. He's so physical when he's wrestling out there. Excellent on his feet. Has improved his mat game quite a bit. So I think he's also going to make some huge strides this year.
Yeah, and we should make sure we put respect on Ja'Cory Teemer's name, 5-time state champion in New York, world team member, world team medalist, and bounced back really well last year, took 3rd. So,
yep.
All right, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to try not to lose my mind, GT, but I'm probably going to lose my mind, just so you know. All right. 165. I'm
Oh,
gonna
here
start.
we go. Let's watch. Let's watch the explosion happen. All right, let's go.
Yeah, we're not-
I'm gonna try to start calm with facts. Evan
Grant-
Wick with what?
Grant and I are not even speaking, David. We're just gonna let you go.
I try to be very generous with time, but I'm going to take a couple minutes here. So Evan Wick first, Shane Griffith second, Carson Karchla third, Julian Ramirez fourth, Cam Amin fifth, Canigliaro sixth. Wick controlled Amin, did a great job of controlling Griffith. Griffith beat Karchla 5-4. The difference was riding time, which is exactly what you would expect. They were even on their feet. Not a ton of other big upsets here. Dean Hamady is a guy to keep an eye on from Wisconsin. The true freshman was a four. I don't know if he wrestled in that Illinois State tournament this past year, but four-timer for all practical purposes. Okay, here we go. I said this before it started. Alex Marinelli should not have been the number one guy. He didn't place at nationals. I understand he was a number one seed. I understand that he didn't wrestle back because he got defaulted. But even if you assume he loses to Shane Griffith and comes back and takes third, you cannot start him in the preseason ahead of Griffith or Wenzel. Otherwise, the national tournament doesn't count. Grant's already laughing, which is fine. But people don't remember what you did in the regular season. I would rather be Mark Branch's freshman year and go 8-9 and win nationals than be 21-0 and go 0-2 barbecue at nationals. Second thing is this. If you have Alex Marinelli number one, keep him number one. He didn't lose. He hasn't lost. So just because Wick beat a guy who'd already lost to somebody else, it doesn't make any sense. There's no consistency in how you do this. You have to have a process. When we started at track, Mark, we had a process. Not everybody agreed with it, but it was consistent. Like, this is all that you ask out of friendships, relationships, and rankings. Be consistent, be reliable. All right, gasket blown. I don't know which one of you's laughing at me harder, so whoever wants to go first. Go ahead, GT, because you look like you're just ready to go.
I sense that both you and Mark have this like extra pressure valve like off to the side. Like when things are not like that don't compute for you guys when it comes to the ranking or ranking systems, like it's been fun to watch as a newcomer to the Weighing In podcast. How I would say, now I don't want to say animated, but like you guys are pretty calm and cool and collected dudes. And then all of a sudden you're like, how is this possible? This is absolute manure. So it's really funny to me as I sit back and look at these type of things because I'm just new to it. So I agree with your assessment that like if you have Alex at 1, you should have kept him at 1. Yes, Wick had a great win over Shane, won the whatever Cliff Keen like tournament or the invite.
And got O-dub.
Yeah. Once again, really, really great tournament. All the guys that were in that bracket, Karchla, Ramirez, Amin, like all of these guys that were in this bracket. Yeah, those are bona fide legit dudes. You won it. You look good doing it. Totally agree. Marinelli's still undefeated, currently ranked number 1. Probably should have stayed number 1, in my opinion, if that's the way that they wanted to assess this weight class.
Well, the weirdest thing is this, and Mark, and then I'll turn it over. Flo dropped him from 1 to 4. And he didn't lose.
And he actually looked really dominant in the Iowa State match that he had on Sunday.
Yes.
So,
and he put him behind Griffith, and I'm sure there are arguments when he lost to Griffith last year. If that's your logic, then he shouldn't have been ahead of him when the season started. Because all that's happened since then is Griffith has lost a match and Marinelli hasn't lost a match. Mark.
Is this how I sounded the other day?
You sounded cooler, I'm sure, because you have a cooler voice than I do. But besides that, probably similar.
Evan Wick had a great weekend. I mean, you're not going to take anything away from him. Now, Marinelli has beaten Wick the last 3 years, never lost to him. Probably has a standing record of 4-1 or 5-1 against Wick in his career. So
Well, then it's not true that he never lost to him. If it's 4-1.
no,
5-1.
he lost. I didn't say that. I said he lost to him in the national tournament his freshman year. So, and that was in the wrestlebacks. He got
Okay.
cradled. And
Yeah,
I
got
think
pinned. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but after that, he
Yeah, it's
did
been-
not lose to him.
It's been all
So,
Marinelli. Yeah.
Yep. But I'm even going to skip that. I think there's some other guys in this weight that you need to be worried about if you're Alex Marinelli or Iowa or Cal Poly, Wick. You know, Keegan O'Toole's on a path right now to win the Hodge Trophy. He's
murdering everyone.
He
He's
is
murdering
killing
everyone.
everybody. And
Yes.
he came off a great Worlds, winning the world title. He is legit and he's growing into the weight. I think he was a little small last year. I think he was getting out muscled, but he had such great technique and could put you on your back from anywhere. He's going to be a problem for a lot of these guys. And I think, obviously, I really like Karchula. I think once he figures out the map part of it, he's as good as anybody in this weight class on his feet, obviously. So I don't understand why they did what they did either, David, but Grant told me to calm down. It's just a ranking.
It's just
really
rankings.
mean anything
It's just
right now.
rankings. Yeah.
Just
You guys are right.
right now. So
So
we're
let's
gonna
point
let
out
that
some,
go. Marinelli will face, if everything pans out in 2 weeks when they wrestle in those duels down in Florida, Iowa could and should wrestle Missouri. So that's going to be a great, motivation for both those guys. And we're going to see then where everybody's at.
yeah. So let's point out a couple of awesome things. Wick, Griffith, Valencia, all in the Pac-12. When's the last time the Pac-12 had 3 top 6 guys? That's amazing. The other thing is this, the Marinelli-O'Toole match is gigantic because the next highest guy this is the shallowest weight in the Big Ten. They only have 2 guys in the top 8, Karchula and Marinelli. So if O'Toole beats Marinelli, it's going to be when Joe Colon beat Ramos. They're going to be handcuffed all year and vice versa because O'Toole will still get to wrestle Whitlake in the Big 12s and maybe in a dual meet. I don't know their schedules by heart. So this is just going to be a fascinating way. And Demetrius Romero, all the other guys in there. All right, 74. Let's go to the brackets. Thank you guys for letting me blow my gasket. I don't think I've done that maybe ever, but I knew it was coming. Mikey Labriola, Ethan Smith, Chris Foca, Cabe DeVos, Mark's guy, Troy Fisher. Adam Kemp had a crazy win over Foca, but Foca came back and placed above him. Really not a lot of upsets here. The big upset was Kemp from the 14 hole beating in order Foca and Fisher, but then proceeded to place behind both of them on the back end. For anybody that doesn't know, that is Lee Kemp's son. DeVos beat Hastings. Okay, so the other crazy thing is this. Pat Schoenfelder, who's the UNI backup, right, GT? Beat Mako.
I think he's in contention for their starting spot at 174 pounds.
Okay, so he's a 50-50 guy. Beats Mako, and then Mako takes Makai Lewis to overtime and kind of had him beat. Had a cradle where he hit his hip. They didn't call it. They threw the brick. They didn't change the call, but he was nip and tuck there. So, and I'm still huge high on Makai. The top of the rankings here don't change that much. Is there anything you guys, Adam Kemp moves way up. His ceiling is high and his basement is pretty low. He's got to work on his consistency. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about here before we move on?
I haven't seen Hayden Hidley at this weight yet. As far as wrestle anybody of note, I don't think. But with him going up weight classes, I'm interested to see where he falls into this mix at this weight class.
Yeah.
Just an observation, nothing other than, just all of those guys that we've mentioned. I don't think that he's wrestled anybody that's probably within, shooting distance of winning a title yet. So I kind of want to see where he's at that weight class up.
And he'll wrestle somebody good in Florida as well.
Yeah, Grant, maybe you can answer this question because I have an issue with this weight, not knowing what's going on. Why would you move Mr. Brands down to 174 if right now he looks like he's your best option at 84 if Kemmer's going to wrestle 74? why would you let him descend down to 174, which is going to affect if he decides to go up to 84 later, because it doesn't give him that much time to get big enough to wrestle and be real competitive with the better guys. Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
GT gave me an answer that was awesome. So go ahead and tell him, GT.
Tell me, GT.
I think Nelson is about at full feed, like 178. So like, I don't think that he's cutting to make 84.
Okay.
So if he floats in between and uses the descent plan, they can use him both at 74 and 84 because he's just not bulky enough in order to get up there to 184 pounds. And I think utilizing, especially while Kemmerer's hurt, he is also the best guy at 174 as a number 2 or potentially as a number 1, because you have Miles Wilson and Abasad that can just wrestle 84 for right now. But if Nelson is beating them and knows that that might be his spot, you know, Iowa needs him at 74 for right now. They'll need him at 84 later in the season, but because he's not a bona fide 84 pounder by weight, you know, let him just kind of float in between the 2 weight classes for right now. Because I just don't think Nelson has, I mean, unless you really want to dedicate him to be about 200 pounds and then cut down, I don't know if that's the case for Nelson. I just think that he's small by weight so that they keep floating him in and out between 84 and 74.
Bet you he's certified at 65. Okay, 84. Romero, Venz, Lowe, Samuelson, Roberts, Stefanik, Lyon, Armstrong, the upsets, Romero over Venz, Romero over Samuelson, Lowe. Again, not a lot of top 8 upsets. I don't know why they put younger Batista. The upset there was at 97, which we'll get to. So not a lot of change at the top, but here's what I'm going to point out. Keckheisen didn't wrestle this past weekend, which is fine, whatever. Missouri beat UNI by 9 points, and Jeremiah Kent pinned the UNI backup at 184. If Keckheisen wrestles and beats Jeremiah Kent, UNI would have actually tied Mizzou. I don't know. I would have to go through the criteria and who would have won there. Me and GT were actually texting about criteria after the younger Batista thing, just in case Cassiope got jelly rolled, you know, but it didn't happen. So not a lot of change at the top here either, guys. I mean, Kayla Romero wrestled well, but that bracket was really like the top 10 on down. Hunter Boland beat Jeremiah Kent in a rankings match where they were ranked like 1 apart, and that really helped decide that duel. But I don't think there's a lot to cover here. Do you guys think? All right,
No,
we'll go to 90s.
people.
Sorry?
Same people every week. It's one of the best weights in the NCAA this year, David, without a doubt to me.
Yeah. So Eric Schultz wins this or makes the semis from the 4-hole. Buchanan, who I think I actually picked him. I'd have to go back and listen, but I think I did. Beats Brucky on an injury point on a restart escape. Not saying he's better or worse, but that was the difference in the match. Brucky then defaulted out. That's why he's 6th. So it goes Buchanan, Schultz, Panola, Woodley, Stout, Brucky, Louis Dupre shows maybe he doesn't belong at 97. We'll see. The upsets at 97, the big one was Younger Batista. I don't know why they have it listed here at 84, but Younger Batista beating Jacob Warner, Schultz match. But and this match, this weight affects the team rankings dramatically. So we'll probably get through this quickly and get to heavyweight so we can talk about the team rankings. Did you guys anything about 97? Buchanan wrestled great. Is there anything you guys wanted to say about this weight? All right.
Grant, go ahead.
I just glad to see Eric Schultz back, you know, kind of wrestling as he normally would. You know, I know that we all were very high on him entering into this tournament. You know, he had a bad national tournament last year, but the guy's a beast. So glad to see him back at it again. And once again, I don't think he ever really left. He just had one bad tournament, so it's not like Johnny Raincloud the crap out of him. But he's a monster. Glad he had a great tournament.
For sure. 285, Slavikowski beats Orndorff. Lance beats Orndorff. Traub, Gas Tank Gary gets it done. Somebody might have predicted him as his dark horse All-American. Maybe GT has that written down somewhere. He beat Andrews. Traxler beats Elam to win the duel. Traub beats Lance. Heinzelman's takes a couple losses. And Jelly Roll loses to Northern Colorado. So the brackets are Traub beats Slavic by default in the finals. Lance third, Orndorff fourth. On Lucas Davison, so close to third, GT. So close to third, so close. So the rankings here, again, don't change a lot. We've got Austin Harris highlighted because it's Cerber. Somebody needs to change that. I think it's Open Mat needs to realize Cerber's wrestling, not Austin Harris. So let's go to the team rankings because these matter. So now look at this. Iowa in the 3 averages, Flo's got Penn State ahead by 1.5. Intermat's got Iowa ahead by 5. And Wynn's got him in basically a dead heat. So it's 1.33 points apart, which is basically a tech fall. Tech fall is 1.5. And if Penn State adds Hildebrandt, they would be the favorite on paper without bonus points. What happened was interesting. Marinelli moved down and Warner moved down. But Penn State still has some holes. They've got like some studs, but they got a couple guys that aren't winning many matches. In your guys' minds, who's the favorite to win nationals right now? I'll just make it a very simple, broad statement.
I think because of the rationale that we've always used in the past, David, and I'm going to say this, I think Iowa's still favored to win it because their guys can keep moving up, a lot of them. They only have one number one, and that's Spencer Lee. So their guys all have an opportunity to move up to a number one. Penn State has 4 number ones. They can't go any higher. So they're getting those points automatically at number one, and not saying they shouldn't because they've done it.
Your point's well taken. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Iowa has more room to improve points wise at the national tournament than Penn State does. But that may not happen. I don't think Iowa has some of the holes that Penn State does, but Iowa still has probably 3 guys that are still looking to become All-Americans that, it's going to be hard to do anyway. Jacob Warner did not help himself this weekend. That puts him looking in, though he's been an All-American in the past. I would imagine he'll be up in All-American status again this year. But Marinelli can now move up. He couldn't before. Kemmer can move up.
Well, Kemmer has to wrestle to move up.
Yeah, a lot of them can move up. So that's
no, but he has to actually wrestle. He actually wrestle matches to move up. That would be helpful.
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah. So GT, who would you have as the favorite?
I mean, I think Iowa's still number one. I think Penn State's closing the gap. I think Max Dean wrestled really well and like solidified himself in that whatever top 3, top 4 rank area. But I mean, once again, as a fan of wrestling, Penn State's still Penn State. Like those guys, they will shell out during the postseason and make really good runs. And some of those young guys that they may be counting on could step up in a big way. I think Penn State also has a very, very dominant group with it. RBY, Nick Lee, Brooks, those 3, Starachi, like all those guys are pretty salty. But as I think we talked at the very beginning of the year, I don't think this is a runaway national tournament. I think we're going to be extremely close the entire tournament. Maybe there'll be a couple of rounds, maybe like where the semis, like put a whole bunch of guys in the semis and it maybe jumps a little bit. But I think you're going to be watching every single round of this national tournament very closely because Michigan is still lurking in the shadows. Arizona State is wrestling extremely well. We'll probably get a lot of their guys through the Pac-12. Oklahoma State, perennial powerhouse, still have a lot of really, really, really good guys on their team. I mean, they could put some guys in the finals just as much as, Michigan and or Arizona State. So I think we're looking at a team race that's extremely dense.
So I would say this, I agree with both of you guys to a certain extent. I don't think those two teams are going to be 40 points ahead of everybody else. Because like Mark said, Penn State's got 4 guys built in at number 1, 80 points. Maybe they all win, but maybe they don't. And if any of them, if Aaron Brooks lost to Miles Amin, if RBY lost to Fix, if Nick Lee lost to Ironman, if Starachi lost to Kemmer, none of those would be shocks. None of those would be shocking matches. And that knocks 16 points off of them right there. On the other side of it, I would say this. Iowa is not proven in some ways. Spencer Lee hasn't wrestled this year. Kemmer hasn't wrestled this year. Cassiope took a bad loss. Warner took a bad loss. Marinelli wrestled really close with his own teammate. I mean, there's some, nobody knows what's really going on with them at 84. DeSanto is like trying to challenge Kyvan Gadsden to a fight while Kyvan's doing the play-by-play. Like, and then Penn State struggles are where they're bad, they're not very good. They're not scoring any points at 57. They're not scoring any points at 65. Bartlett's sliding the wrong way at 49. But if they get Hildebrandt, that's a big pickup. If he can even take 7th, that's 6-7 points, 6.5 plus any advancement or plus any bonus, excuse me, that could be the difference. So if they had gotten Soriano, I think it would have been a wrap. And the rumor was they were in on it close to the end. So we got 2 minutes left. We were going to talk about Ironman, but we didn't. And I'm glad we didn't because of what we talked about at the beginning. But if you love wrestling, especially if you love college wrestling, go watch Ironman this weekend because a ton of those dudes are going to be wrestling in college and you should be hoping your favorite school recruits them. The schedule this weekend in college isn't super heavy. Bedlam is on TV on Sunday. And that could be very, very one-sided. As good as OU is, they match up terribly with Oklahoma State, like Prada, Master Giovanni, Madrigal, Fix, kind of up and down. Like Woodley's got to wrestle Ferrari. Heinzelman's got to wrestle Serber. So there's a bunch of matchups there where they're a little like a notch or two down. So for Mark and Grant, I'm David. Once again, RIP JD, RID Mark, Ryland. We'll speak to you all next week.